Hello, everyone. I'm Birgit Vogel. I'm a cardiologist and currently a cardiovascular disease researcher at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. I have been a member of the Lancet Women and Cardiovascular Disease Commission, which is led by Dr. Roxana Meran. And I have the pleasure today to speak to the founders of the International Heart Spasms Alliance on a very important topic, ischemia with non-obstructive coronary arteries that affects mostly women. And we also have the honor to listen to women to share their experience with this condition.
I was diagnosed on January 1st, 2001. I had my first heart attack because of the spasms. I was diagnosed right away, so I was very lucky. But I was also told, don't worry about it. As I age, it'll go away. And it's not hereditary. It's no big deal. Just take my medication. 12 years later, I had my second heart attack. At that point, it was in the Widowmaker. I had a new cardiologist. He was in the cath lab with me. And after that experience, he said I actually needed 3 large stents and I was too bad to stent because they were too large. So he was preparing me for triple bypass. But he wanted to wait to see how my progression was after that severe heart attack. So 3 months later, he repeated the cardiac catheterization. And he repeated it 3 times that day. He said there was nothing wrong with my heart. He said he's never seen anything like it. I'm kind of an anomaly in this little town. So he gave me different medications. It helped. But 2 years after that, in 2015, I was rushed in with another heart attack. That cardiologist, I don't think, was aware or as knowledgeable. He proceeded to take me to the cath lab. I was not pre-medicated because I am allergic to iodine dye. I was given multiple nitroglycerin tablets. He started to cath me, could not get the spasms to stop. He then took out the guide wire and put it back in and got into my right coronary artery and tore it 70% down to my lung. From that point, I died. They brought me back. They gave me to a thoracic surgeon who was wonderful. He saved my life. He did not know if he'd be able to save me. He said I might have needed a heart transplant because the damage was so bad. After that, I did survive. However, the doctor from the cath lab, he would not see me after that episode in the hospital. So he sent his physician's assistant. I was told this is normal for people that did cocaine and for people that smoked, which I did neither of. After I was discharged from that, I knew I couldn't be the only one. I just couldn't. So a couple months later in October, that happened in March 7th of 2015. In October, I decided to get on Facebook and I started a Facebook group. It took 6 months to find somebody with my condition. And then in the summer of 2016, Cindy joined. And then Cindy and I started to become friends. And a year or so later, we decided that we always knew we needed a website because there's no good website out there for people with Prinzmental or vasomastic angina. So we knew we needed a website. And then Cindy said about a nonprofit. So it was in motion, and that was a couple years, but then COVID hit. So once COVID hit, we were up to almost 2,000 members, and we were in 60 something odd countries at that time. But our Facebook group went down. It crashed. We had no idea where it went to. We had people messaging us from all over the world asking what happened. And then it was down for 2 weeks. We were starting a whole nother group just to try and complement the one that we did have. And we had a lot of members contacting us. So we had at least a framework. But our Facebook group wound up coming back up live, so which was good. But we knew we had to do something right then. So then we started proceeding with the International Heart Spasms Alliance. The Facebook group is now in 76 countries, and we have 20 close to 2,800 members now, which are still helping ones. Since that time, we were able to become a nonprofit through a local community fund here where I live. We're under their umbrella, so we are a nonprofit. We actually were able to become incorporation as well, just to, you know, for the legitimacy of everything. We wanted to keep everything above board and to get our members to feel comfortable with us and being able to rely on our information.
I was misdiagnosed in my 20s with asthma. I had symptoms of breathlessness, shoulder blade pain, numb cold hands and feet on waking from sleep, and this grey, gaunt appearance with distended neck veins. It was put down to asthma, but the puffer did nothing to relieve my symptoms. It wasn't until I was about 35 that I got given my coronary vasospasm diagnosis. This was only because I suffered a myocardial infarction in non-obstructive coronary arteries. I had the typical heart attack symptoms at the time of central stabbing chest pain. Went up my neck, down my arms, and it made me vomit. See, women aren't the same. Like, we have shoulder blade pain, or we get nausea, or we get tooth pain, or we just feel a little bit off. Women aren't the same with their chest pain. At the time, I really felt isolated and alone, and I wanted to find a support group. I soon found Terry's Facebook support group. We soon realised that there were others in the group that were just like us. We also realised that at the time there wasn't a credible website covering the conditions, and we wanted to change that. We searched for people in our group that could help us to get our idea rolling. Lucille designed the website, and Sarah and Annette came on board as equal founding members of International Heart Spasms Alliance, not-for-profit, with Terry and I. It was a real no-brainer to have Annette and Sarah on board, as they advocate in their own countries about the conditions. And Annette's infographics are next to none. Terry is really in a class of her own. She has this unique way of being able to get the business side of things done with minimal cost. I have an emotional agenda of why I need to get this rolling as quickly as possible. You see, my father passed at the age of 40 from a sudden heart attack. I was only 14. He had his first heart attack at 28 and was told it was gastrointestinal and growing pains. And now my daughter has started getting symptoms in her 20s with 2 small kids and going to emergency with minimal answers. Our website has been absolute lifeline for our family and our community in providing education and support. You see, this is an under-researched, under-diagnosed, and under-recognised condition. More needs to be done. Now's the time to make education and testing for these conditions commonplace.
And my story starts about 10 years ago when I was rushed into hospital with a suspected heart attack. I had really severe chest pain. I had abnormal ECGs. My troponins were a bit iffy. And I was in a lot of pain, but they couldn't understand why I was in a lot of pain because I had had a previous angiogram, but it showed I'd got clear coronary arteries. Now somebody looked at me and I said, "This feels like labour," which is very typical of me because I was still at that time a practicing midwife. So I translate everything into midwifery because that's the person I was. And he put IV GTN nitrates up and my chest pain just stopped. the problem, and then they actually diagnosed me at first with microvascular dysfunction, which I've discovered later, since I had my angiogram with acetylcholine was incorrect, and I actually have coronary artery spasms, vasospastic angina. And my cardiologist said, "Yep, this is what you've got." I would come into hospital and people wouldn't accept his diagnosis and kept telling me that no, I couldn't have angina because my coronary arteries were clear. Perhaps I was having a panic attack, or it was in my head, and basically just not listening to me. And I found that really, really frustrating, especially as a midwife. I couldn't understand why they were not recognizing how much pain I was in and listening to me. And I thought, well, I'm a midwife and I'm having problems communicating. How would somebody who has no medical background, doesn't know how the system works, how would they negotiate their care pathway? So I first of all approached the British Heart Foundation, and I volunteered, and I was appointed as one of the first lay members of the Clinical Studies Committee, looking at the research project from the patient's perspective, and again about patient involvement, which I am absolutely passionate about, and looking at plain English summaries and everything's explained in a way that people can understand. So when I was asked to come on board and to help with the website, I got really excited because I had helped with some of the information that's on the BHF website about microvascular and vasospastic angina. So I had some experience, and all of us very much wanted a website that was understandable to people, it made sense, and it was accurate. And I mean, we did put that all together by ourselves, and we did research it to make sure that it was correct. And also the knowledge is power for people, for patients. It gives them the ability to be able to have the conversations with their caregivers, to be able to help give their guidelines and have a respectful conversation between the clinician and the patient. And the other advocacy I do is to do with this called What Matters to You initiative, which is about, again, patient involvement and quality, improving the quality of care, and ultimately improving that patient pathway and the experience that we have as patients. Because at the moment, you'll hear lots and lots of stories that we are not being respected, we're not being listened to, people don't understand our condition, and rather than trying to understand, they're just dismissing us. People are being sent away without a diagnosis, being left in pain, which, being in pain, leaves people in emotional and physical distress. And we don't want that to happen anymore. We want people to have a timely, accurate diagnosis and acceptance of their condition. We want more research and better treatment options.
I'm Annette Pompa from the USA. I'm a patient who's been dealing with microvascular dysfunction and spasm for over a decade. I was actually a very fit, active woman, 41. I mean, I was meditating, running a 5K every other day, had a really good diet. Like, everything was, I thought it was my best shape ever, actually. And in my case, this sort of jumped me overnight, all of a sudden. And I don't believe in being superstitious, but I remember my last run because I did think in my head as I was cooling down, wow, I don't know what I'd do if I couldn't do this. I don't know what I could do if I wouldn't be able to run, because it was my therapy. And like overnight, I became so short of breath, heavily fatigued, I couldn't even read to my children. So I took a really fast downturn, and it was difficult to get anyone to listen to me. I had gone to the ER several times. They would see little things, but not a lot. Kept saying, go follow up with a cardiologist. That cardiologist, he said, you can't have heart disease. And I did all the exercise stress testing, nuclear stress testing, all of the things. And it ended up being overlooked because he just really wasn't looking for the right things. I found more information online, and then also a local doctor, and changed over to him for a second opinion. He circled so many things on my information from my first doctor that he was missing, like ST depressions, he actually also said that I had breast artifact, which I am a very small woman. I don't have a lot of extra. So they were blaming some of those imaging, on having extra tissue, which I did not. So he was very interested and liked hard cases. And I found online it was Inspire was a medical site that I found all these other women that were talking about some of the same things. So never been on Facebook, but I decided women my age in their 40s tended to be on Facebook. So I went on and decided to form a private group and found, just like Terry and Cindy, other people that were like me. So that was in 2010. And we kind of grew from there. And that's how I met Terry and Cindy and Sarah. So we found that we really had to, my life had halted, and imagining how that just suddenly upturns everything. And it wasn't, I didn't fit any profile as a heart patient. So it was imperative to get the word out. And like they said, I always wanted also a website. We need someplace, not social media, but a place that people can go to. And, the social media is great for support. It is wonderful for people to feel like they're not alone and they're not going crazy. But we needed a space for information, and something that all of us really believed strongly in was that we needed that patient-doctor relationship where we could communicate and we were partners. And how could we do this? We wanted to form a website with professional, cardiologists and doctors that were already on board with all of this, so that we could start a wider global initiative to get awareness and patients and doctors together. So that drew me to them, and they asked me to come on board. I was honored that they would even ask. And so our main goal is information and getting everyone together.
I've been through 3 physicians since that time, because my lovely cardiologist, who was on vacation during that whole cardiac episode, was on vacation. He apologized to me for going on vacation. And he said, I'm so sorry, but now I'm going to retire too. So I live in a small town. There are no cardiologists that see a lot. I was the only one in a town of 20,000 people that he thought had this. I think there's a lot more. We're just underdiagnosed. They just don't know what to look for. And the ones that you tell, I was told I never had a heart attack. I've had 4 heart attacks. I was told, oh, you're lying. I still am told you're lying. You have to go look at my chart to actually believe me. But I don't take no for an answer anymore. I tell them what I need. So I'm to that part in my life where I advocate a lot more for myself, and I just speak up and say no.
And the confidence from the group is probably helping you a lot in this.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Banding together is huge.
Yeah, I had realization that I was busy doing this advocacy all by myself in the UK. I thought, I can't do this by myself. And to be able to work with Annette and Cindy and Terry I describe it that we're a table, we've got 4 legs, and we need our 4 legs. And every now and again, because we are affected by the condition, one of the legs will be a bit wobbly. The table will wobble a bit, but it will still stay up. So we sort of we work together, and we complement each other. We've got very, very different strengths, and we work well together. So and I do now have a very supportive cardiologist. I live in London, so I had the opportunity to go and see the world leaders in my condition. So I knew that I was really fortunate. And I have an admission protocol which is written with my cardiologist. Well, I wrote most of it, and then he wrote his bit, and the pain management team, and it was co-production. So that's there, and it's sitting on the computer system. So when I go in, it gets pulled out, so they know how to manage me. And it's changed. I was in recently, and one of the cardiologists senior said, "Oh yes, you are a group of patients that we haven't really looked after properly. It's about time we did look after you properly." I nearly fell over, because before it was, well, no, you haven't got angina, go away. Now it's, yes, we recognise that this group of patients are being neglected and we need to do something. So things are shifting.
And I do think it's an excellent point that you said with you living in London. I did have to go, and I'm not in a backwoods area in Pennsylvania of the United States. I'm in a city area, but I still had to travel to larger places. So especially 10 years ago, it's gotten a little better, a little, but people who don't have the best diagnostic tools available, like a center of excellence, or, all they have is their relationship with their cardiologist, and fostering that, and the knowledge that, needs to be shared is huge, because not everyone can travel.
Maybe we can go now to hear from, before we go back to you as a founding group and listen what the next steps are, maybe we can listen to experience from Hyvel and Anne. Maybe we start with Hyvel telling her story, and then also what it means to her to have a group like the International Heart Spasms Alliance.
Hello, everyone. As I listen to everyone on the panel speak, it's so amazing how our stories are connected. We're from different countries, different colors, but we all have the same issue. And it's so important that we become our own self-advocate, especially coming from a place when you don't know and you're afraid. And how do you go about navigating? And I spoke to Annette last week in reference to how her Facebook page was a catalyst that started me down a journey, which I so desperately needed in my life, because the doctors had no answer for me. And I started research, and I started, taking accountability. And my story started, it's multi-layered. It's not only the heart issue, because it stems from a lot. It stems from misdiagnosis, going to the ER, and I'm a Black person, and you're hysterical, or you're overworked, or you're overburdened. Let me give you some anxiety pills, or back pain. Oh, let me give you some pain pills, some narcotics, and send you on your way. And it started for me there, because I believe that my heart issue started well beyond 2014. And let me take you to 2014. I'll take you back. In 2014, I had a stroke. And 2 months later, I had a heart attack. And I had to undergo quadruple bypass, immediate emergency stat surgery, because my widowmaker was 99% blocked. So I had to have a quadruple bypass surgery. And then it started to unveil itself as far as the condition that was misdiagnosed. When I was in a hospital during the initial stroke visit or episode, I really never had an EKG done on me. It was always stress, sciatica, back pain. It was everything else except a heart condition. So I was thrust into this world of finding, in reference to a cardiologist, a thoracic surgeon, cath lab, and all this multi-layered stuff that I had to learn to navigate. And, being a woman, and you're trying to, I know my body, but the doctors are telling you, no, it's not that, or let's give you this medication, but this medication is not working. They're not listening, and we have to be really assertive. And when you're assertive, they treat you a certain way. And so there's a lot of burden that we as women carry. When we go to the emergency room, we present ourselves, it's you're overworked, you're overstressed, but they don't look at the layers or the cause. They're treating the symptoms, but not really going after the foundation of what's going on. And beneath all the layers, and I call them scaffolding, there was a heart issue that was never addressed. And that almost killed me. And I come to the fact of where I had to be assertive. There's a few times I had to tell a doctor to leave the room because he was not giving me the answers I wanted, because he treated me like a typical heart patient. After I had the quadruple bypass, I had to go back for actually 3 more stent surgeries, because they were trying to fix problems, or they're trying to put out fires, but not truly addressing the cause of what was going on. It was, okay, let's go ahead, let's do something invasive. There were certain pills that were tried, but I was still having a spasm. I'm like, why am I still having this? If I'm sleeping, oh my gosh, I may have a spasm. And it's like, okay, I can't even walk flight of stairs. I was having this issue. So the doctor was like, I'm trying to diagnose, and I'm like, there's more going on. You know, the surgery was in, and it should have fixed the problem, but it wasn't fixed. So every other month I was in the ER, actually 2014, 2015, actually for 3-year span. I was in the hospital probably every month. And you know, Sarah talked about the protocol. The cardiologist, they got tired of me going to the ER. So we created a protocol as far as, you know, my nitro, I go rest, and in 30 minutes, 10 minutes, if I'm not feeling good after the rest, go to the ER. And then they started nitroglycerin. And so this became part of my life. And I'm like, no, something else is going on. What's the status? Because, you know, the open heart, a quadruple bypass should have fixed this issue, but it wasn't fixed. So I started looking for answers. I'm like, no, something else is going on that we need to address. And I was the person, after I looked at the net page and I started researching microvascular in heart disease in women, I'm like, an epiphany went off. And I'm like, wait a second. I was the one that told my cardiologist about it. And we did a series of stuff, and you know, pills like neuronexia, angina issues, and blood thinners, and you know, everything was aligned. And I kind of learned, because a community, how to live with the illness. Granted, you know, every day is not perfect, and I'm just blessed to share. And I started searching and seeking for information, and there was an issue. I noticed that every forum I went to, I was the only Black person in the room. And I know this was an issue. And after I started looking at the statistics, it's diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, the statistic that we are dying, Black women are dying most of all of this stuff. And here I am, the only Black person in the room. And that's an issue for me. So I started advocating for myself. And I'm like, no, I have to bring my sisters along. That's SISTAS. I can try to save me and work on me. And God has given me another opportunity. And I have to be that voice for people who don't know, to navigate. Because if you're not strong or courageous, you can just put your head under those pillows and die. Or get caretakers. We take care of everybody's issue except our own. And it's so important that we put ourselves first, because we can't pour from an empty cup. We cannot pour, and we can't look towards other people to save us. We have to save ourselves by speaking up. So I applaud you, everyone on this line, for just being that voice. For those who don't know, which this is vital, this alliance is so critical, because a lot of people don't know, that are suffering in silence. But when you hear somebody utter something, oh, I have that symptom. The doctor told me that. There's a connection now. There's a heart connection, what is so needed. So we are saving lives, most definitely. Keep up the good work. And I applaud you for what you all do and bring to the table. This is a work that needs to be done. You see, my diagnosis does not define me. It's what I do to interact with women every day. That's going to be the catalyst that carries me through. Thank you.
Oh,
I went to just applaud you.
I know. My heart hurts for you.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank
Oh my
you.
God, I know, that was beautiful. I think also as women, we're so used to being caregivers that we can't take a step back and let somebody take care of us. Because I know I pushed through for years. I was a single mom raising 2 kids by myself, and I worked 11-hour days.
Yeah.
I was doing it to myself, yes, but I needed to get things done. I always put myself on the back burner. Like Ivelle said, you have to be forefront. You have to be putting yourself out there saying, hear me. I mean, she is so right with that. You have to speak up. And you can't pour from an empty cup, just like she said, you can't do it.
So Anne, if you like, you can maybe now share your experience.
Okay, yeah. My name is Anne, and I live in Malaysia. I live in Petaling Jaya, which is about 10 minutes from the boundary with Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital of Malaysia. I think I'm probably one of the luckier ones if I read Facebook post that we have had in the Prince Metal group. Yeah, I really think I'm one of the luckiest one. I was also not diagnosed by my cardiologist. Yeah, I was diagnosed by a friend who is a doctor, who is a geriatrician. But let me just go back. Yeah. So I'm 56 years old this year, 56 going to 57. I had my first episode of angina in 2019. So I have a relatively stable home life. That's not to say it's happy all the time, but it's mostly happy. I had just joined a new place. I've just joined this new place for 6 months plus when I had my first episode of angina. It was just one morning, just trying to get to work, and I was on a call, and I started feeling as though I was about to choke. Something was not quite right. And it was bad enough for me to go to the emergency department of the hospital, which is just 10 minutes away. It's a private hospital. After a while, the pain went off and they sent me home. And then they gave me the option of going to see the cardiologist. And since I have seen the cardiologist there, so I decided I'll just wait to see him. So I waited until 1 p.m. That's like 4 or 5 hours after. And then he said, well, if you like, we can do some more tests. And then, one test after another. Then he said, you better just get warded just in case. And then from that to CCU to ICU. And you can just go home. I ended up in ICU that day. And the next day they put me to do an angiogram. And that's like, and they said there was nothing wrong with me. But before you can even do the angiogram, if you're going to the hospital, to the private hospital, they wanted 40,000 ringgit from me, first as deposit. Now that's a lot of money in a country where 40,000 ringgit would be about 10,000 US dollar. Yeah. Fortunately, I do have a credit card that I can just put in, and it didn't cost me that much, but they wanted 40,000. If you don't have 40,000, that means you cannot do your procedure to even test where you are. So $40,000 ringgit in there, and they did the test and said, okay, nothing's wrong, so you go home. So I went home. That was January 2019. I went home, and 2 days later, at about 4 a.m., I had the pain that was so bad that I thought I would really die. It was a different sort of pain, but it was still here, and I thought I would die. So remember, the hospital is just 10 minutes away. My husband, in his panic, missed the turn, and we had to spend more time reaching there. And again, they did all kinds of tests, stomach tests, this, that, and they couldn't figure out, and they sent me home again. So by which time then I had to, they gave me all kinds of medicine. And this is a whole bag of medicine that I have. That was, I tried a whole bag of medicine that I still keep, because I don't know what to do with those drugs. I tried this, I tried that. And then, but I look at my own notes, and by April, I already was on this magic drug called Indor. It's a slow release nitrate. I tell you, that's a magic drug. That's a magic drug, yeah. And since then, that means within 2 months, I started having Indor. The dosage was not right, but I'm now on the right dosage. I'm still trying to sort out my blood pressure, which I now call a blessing, because if I had low blood pressure, I would not be able to take Indor, because it would have lowered my pressure further. So I have a condition that allows me to take a drug that helps me with my condition. Yeah. So till today, I have not officially, well, the doctor did finally write down Prince Metal, but I've not done any provocative test at all. to test whether it is prismatal or microvascular. He has only named it originally as unstable angina, which doesn't tell me what it is. I went to get a second opinion at a university hospital nearby my house. Fortunately, I live in a city where there are many hospitals. And he said that you seem to be doing okay. If the drug works, continue on. And since the drugs work, it is a form of reverse confirmation of your condition. And I thought that's good enough for me. I don't have to go for any other test. So, yeah. And so with the drugs, I think I can live a very full life. I'm still working. The year I had it, I had just sent my son off to London for his university studies. I would need the money to continue on with his studies, yeah. So I'm still working. So it's been now three years plus, right? 2019 is already 3 years plus. The year where I was diagnosed with medication, I traveled to London twice. I wanted to have a holiday as well. So I sent him off. He came back from his summer holidays, and I sent him off in September. And then I spent 2 weeks there, and I come back. And then in December, it was his birthday. I decided that I was going to go again. My husband said, "You're crazy. You want to go? You go on your own." And I traveled to London on my own. So, and then in the middle of winter, I know that cold can be a trigger. I didn't really have much problem. It was in September that I had a little bit where I said, okay, I can't walk. We have to get a taxi. But otherwise, I think I still managed to do a lot in 2019. And then, of course, 2020, everything shut down. And yeah, so I don't think my experience is the experience of many other women, say, in my country. It could be genetic, because I remember my mom telling me she had chest pains. I didn't take her seriously. Nobody took her seriously. And now she's a Parkinson patient. So now she can't speak because of her vocal cords has been affected by Parkinson. I think that I'm lucky because I live in the city. There are many hospitals. I can afford the drugs. I can afford the care. And even if I'm not working, I think I can still afford the care. That's different from if you went to a government hospital and you have to go and see a GP, and every time you will see a different cardiologist. Even though my cardiologist did not diagnose me, with time, I think he did try to work with me to ensure that I had the right dosage of drugs, but I saw him a very few weeks every month. So it cost a lot of money to finally get the diagnosis and to have reached where I have reached. I'm still testing out because my blood pressure is still not very stable. I think I'm really grateful to my friend who's a geriatrician, Malaysian, was my schoolmate who now works in Singapore. And he was the one who gave me the name Prince Metal. And because he gave me the name, I went back to the cardio and who told me you shouldn't be Googling. And I said, no, I didn't Google. Right. And then because I had that name, I could go online, and that's when I found the group. And I can't tell you how much the group means to me in terms of my sanity, because to know that I'm not crazy, to know that I didn't imagine it, to know that I'm not just anxious, to know that I can get help, because this is a worldwide group. I can get help anytime, because when it's night for me, it's morning for someone else. When it's morning, and I can help others too, even when it's midnight if I happen to be on. And I really, really am grateful to the group. Yeah. And of course to the cardio as well, who work with me, because I have his mobile. Which means that if I am really in desperate situation, I can still contact him. So, yeah, and through this group, now I've met all of you. And so I think all in, I'm still very grateful for what I have. Yeah.
Listen to your patient.
Yeah, listen.
That's the biggest thing, is listen to them and don't dismiss them. Don't talk over them. Don't think
And
you know, because you don't know what they're feeling. You don't know their situation. You have to listen to the patient.
I think it's individualized care also. You know,
Yeah.
doctors are so used to treating
Yeah.
patients like a something patient,
Right.
but we all are different and we all bring
All
different
different.
stuff to the table.
We're not cookie cutters. We're not a
Yeah.
cookie cutter
Ooh.
cookie cutter diagnosis. I've always said that.
I
Yeah.
think that
I
my
think the last-
cardiologist was very much so doing, when I laid my hand on his arm and let him know, I was just looking for a partner. I wasn't expecting him to fix me, because a lot of cardiologists are used to intervening and fixing, and it's frustrating for them as well. So when I laid my hand, I said, I know I'm not a highly satisfying patient. I know that, but I just want a partner in my care to be the best I can.
I think it all comes from educating emergency staff, really. I remember an admission that I had in 2020, and I was told, we don't know what to do with you anymore. Do we just wait for you to have heart failure? And that's
oh dear.
the most shocking thing for a young person to hear. And I don't want that to happen to anybody else. It's the system has to change. It's not about just looking at the blockages. They're going to look beyond the blockages.
There's another important thing, is that you might get the diagnosis, but we might be going to diagnosis to nowhere because there's no treatment options. Everybody's still honed in on that. And the very important thing about patient-centered care, which is what we're asking for too. And I have this written in my care plan to acknowledge my expertise in my own condition. That is written to remind the people who are looking after me that I've lived with this for 10 years. I was a former practitioner. We know our bodies. We know, we've learned over time what works for us, and please respect that. And again, it's back to listening, and it's the respectful relationship that you have with your caregivers, the nursing staff and the cardiologists. And when it works, it's one of the best relationships that you can ever have, because when you find I've had some wonderful care. Some of it's from the nursing staff, some from a physiotherapist, and some from my cardiologist, my GP. And those are really, really important relationships. And that's what we're talking about again. It's about respect, mutual respect. Medicine at its best is the application of research and the science of medicine with compassion and kindness. And that's what we're asking for.
I think there's a bit of sexism as well. My doctor, my cardiologist is a male, and in the initial stages, my husband will accompany me to see him. Well, he's retired, so he's got lots of time. So he accompanies me, and the doctor will talk to him. I'm the patient, and he talks to him, and I'm not, I'm an educated person. I work in a public listed company. I run a department.
Talked about sexism, the big thing for me is racism. Access to care, especially being a Black African American woman. There's not a lot of research done. And when a doctor, like when we present ourselves, it's aggressive treatment. But it is taking the time to actually treat the systemic issues as far as education and bring in other stuff. So it's not just throw everything at their patient and that's it, because they're not going to take care of themselves or they're non-compliant. And that was the major issue. I went to a doctor one time and he's like, I'm here. I want to work as a team. And so they're willing to do as much because they know that Black African-American women or in general are non-compliant as far as taking medication. But it's so important that you address the person and not the social economical stuff that happens in the process. So we need to have access and also be treated as people that are there and want to live.
Yes.
None of us are on the same medication. Indoor does not work for me at all. Ranexia does wonders for me. Along with diltiazem. And I mean, I don't think any of us are on the same
No,
medications.
no.
You're not going to find
Oh, I've heard
anybody-
of all these drugs, yes.
Yeah, yes. And that's a shame.
Experimented with all of them, yes.
And
Trial and error, trial and error.
Yeah, they put me
Yes.
on beta blockers. It made it 100 times worse. But some beta blockers
Yeah.
work for some people. There's nobody that's the same in our group. We have 2,800 members. I guarantee you nobody has the same medication or the same dosages, because what works for one doesn't work for another. Thank you for even listening to us.
Yes.
That is a huge step forward. I mean, I've been dealing with this now for over 21 years. And 4 heart attacks that I know of, I am afraid to go to the emergency room for fear of going through this speech time and time again. I won't go. I don't know how many heart attacks I've had because I don't like to go all the time because I'm afraid to go because of the care you receive. And like Annette said, it has to start in the emergency room too, or like Cindy said, emergency room doctors have to be educated because that's usually the first time whenever it presents itself for a lot of people. You have to start the patient process. And that's huge, I think. So to me, that's important. I think the website, I love our website too, just because it's easy to understand, which is very good for people like me who don't want to Google everything. But thank you for taking the time because this has been huge. And 7 years ago, if I wanted to died and came back, I don't know. I don't know if I'd still be here today because these girls have all saved my life and the group has saved my life. So thank you all.